Hello, dear listener. You might have noticed I've calmed down. I'm not like Mick Tully today because what we're doing is we're going to approach the subject of mindfulness and martial arts. And I know straight away you're thinking, wait a minute, the juxtaposition of this crazy ADHD individual, Mick Tully, and he's going to talk about the stillness of the mind and getting the yin to the yang and everything like that. As you may have noticed, I've got totally into character and I've grown the beard for this show. But actually, it's something that really, really, really fascinates me. And as I get older, it's something that I don't want to sound really homina about this, but it's something that I've actually embraced more and more. And that's not because the body's going on me. It's the fact that I just want something more out of this. So we started talking before we even got online, as they say today. We were talking about meditation, and do you know what? It was quite funny because I was speaking to Nathan about it, and I spoke to Kurt about it, and it was quite bizarre because it was almost like a secret that we'd never spoke about to each other. Have you ever done that meditation thing? And I'm like, well, I do. And you went, well, I have done too. And it's almost like, why didn't we admit it? So, Nathan, we're going to go straight over to you because I can tell you when I first started my meditation, which was in the old karate days, right? But I'm going to go straight to you. Nathan, first time you decided to embrace the eightfold path and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of us, the first time we will have even thought about meditation or tried breathing exercises or anything like that would have been our instructor getting us to do it. I remember when I started karate and I must have been like 7 years old, and you sit there and you have your hands in your lap and you do the breathing exercises before class, and you're supposed to be centering yourself and letting the troubles of the world go by and leaving all the other stuff that you brought onto the mat behind you, and then being centered and ready to train and to listen to your coach and be part, that body and mind connection and all that kind of stuff. And it comes back again and again and again. And in combat sports, we don't tend to do it too much. Like, we'll do it from like a traditional martial arts sense, and then suddenly it'll disappear. And then like the sports psychology coach guy will come in, and then they'll be like, right, no, you have to do mindfulness, and then you're back into it again, and then it'll disappear, and then you kind of bring it back again. So it's something that's come in and out of my martial arts life right from the start, all the way through till today, where often at the end of a class, I like to have a class do a little relaxation exercise and breathing exercise. And I often try and say we're transitioning from people that are punching and kicking and choking each other to chilled out and relaxed people who are taking something else out into the world and not what we were just doing there. But I'm interested to with the different arts that you guys have trained in and all the different coaches you've trained with, has that come into your training at all?
Well, me personally, straight away, I can tell you, I first, I remember the first time we ever did it. And I was like, you're in a church hall in Coventry, and we've just done, it's 1985, 86, and we've just tried to batter each other. And then my instructor, Andy Margaret, had just been over, he'd just been to the Nichidai University in Japan. And he came back and he goes, there's this great thing that they do now. And I was thinking, what? And literally, we just sat there, legs folded. Literally, I swear to God, at one stage I thought I was in some like Lamar's breathing class, and all I needed was a pregnant chick with me, right? Because there was loads of focus on your breathing, homina, homina, homina. And he just went, Mokuso. And then the next thing you know, like everyone went quiet. And me being me, I was like, I had to have a quick look out my eye to see all of my mates. And they're all doing this and they're really getting into it. And it was really bizarre because I was like, you bunch of weirdos, what are you doing, right? But then the less I did it, the more I felt weird because everyone else was doing it. And then the smiles came over their faces, their shoulders relaxed. And it was like you say, Nathan, I do it at the end of jiu-jitsu classes now, where I sit down and say, look, guys, we're going to stretch out. And we normally talk about, trust me, it's not meditative stuff that we talk about. It's normally like conspiracy theory. It's jiu-jitsu, so it's going to be serial killers and like conspiracy theories. But as I say to the guys, we've got to get ourselves calm and back down again, so that we can literally get into the car and drive home like normal human beings after being super adrenalized. So with me, my first exposure was karate, and I won't lie to you, I poo-pooed it. But you know, Nathan, I'd like to know your thoughts on it, because I did a full 180 after it.
Yeah, I mean, I want to hear Kurt's in a moment, but it just made me think. I mean, one of the reasons I was thinking about this was it came up recently. We had Adisa Banjoko, a Health Gracie lineage black belt, visiting the UK. Super interesting guy. He's a journalist about chess and martial arts and hip hop, and he's very connected within the hip hop community. And he's over doing some tours and talks in mosques and all sorts of different things over here. He does videos on stoicism, and like, he's just a super interesting guy, really nice guy. And before the class, he did breathing exercises, and on his Instagram, he does breathing exercises on there. Lots of different count ones. And he was talking about, you know, just centering yourself and being ready for the training and preparing yourself for the training, being more connected to your body than perhaps you've been earlier in the day, and that kind of stuff, which was kind of how I always took it. But then when you were just saying about everyone doing it together and you not doing it kind of made you feel left out, I think there's the practice of doing it by yourself, and then there's the practice of doing it in a group, and you all kind of getting into the same level to be able to go into the class and do stuff together. And that's not really something I just thought about till you just started talking about the dynamics of doing it as a group.
Yeah, I think like a lot of things in life, it's nice when you do it alone, but it's more powerful when you have a partner, right? For my bit, I mean, I guess I don't know how much we've ever really talked about it, even Mick, as long as I've known you, but I've been into weird stuff my whole life. So this is like actually home base for me, you know. It's not really something I ever really talk about. I have tattoos all over me that represent all different things, so I don't like hide it or hide from it, but yeah, I've always been interested in meditation and sort of the internal aspects of martial arts. You know, we all talk about finding martial art through film, and two of the things that came to mind when you had talked about this subject, Nathan, we like proposed this as an episode idea, immediately that popped into my head are probably my first two examples of meditation. And one is from Karate Kid Part 3, which is like the Miyagi breathing method, the bringing the hands out and back and up and down. And then in Bloodsport, there's two scenes that I can recall. I think they're both in Bloodsport, where he's doing the splits and he's doing breathing exercises, right? One of them he's in the hotel room, and one of them he's like on the top of a building or whatever. Yeah, and he's got the cool hand positions and stuff. And those two things I did as a kid all the time. I don't think they did anything for me, but I felt awesome, like I was the dude in the movie, you know? So what's funny is my initial entry point into meditation was like very ego driven in that way. I want to look and feel cool, just like the guys in the movies, which is ironic because it's the opposite of the point of meditation. But, you know, when I was a teenager, my dad got into yoga. So I was into meditation and yoga as a fairly young person, sort of like a, you know, teenage, like new age dirtbag kind of kid. And I don't know if you guys know, but I went to school to be a massage therapist too. So when I was like 18, that's what I did. And I studied alternative medicine. I worked a lot with herbal medicine and still do from time to time. So all that kind of like side of things and that ethos, and a lot of this has always been a big part of my life in the background. Ironically, when I got like really deep into martial art, like in my 20s, where I was like, this is going to be the thing I do for the rest of my life. I've always been in and out of it. But once I kind of went full time with it, that's when I stopped doing all of that stuff. And I think it was just a phase or a stage for me that was about the physical aspects of it. I was learning about violence and that sort of thing. And so I was kind of immersed in a different world where that sort of sensitivity maybe felt like a vulnerability, or like I wanted to kind of maintain some sense of like, I can whoop somebody's ass, and the new age part of me can't do that. You know what I mean? And so it was just a stage in my life. And it was when I moved back here, like into my mid-30s, where I was kind of refound that side of me. So the last maybe 5-10 years, I've been kind of deep back into it.
Yeah, I can see how it does seem tend to be something that comes in and then you end up coming back around to it. And I was just wondering that, like, yeah, there's definitely some of the physical stuff when you start thinking about like the violence aspects of it that seems counterintuitive to it. But then also, I'm wondering if there's anything from the harder training that you got that you didn't need from the meditation. Because when you think about mindfulness, they talk about, like, you know, body scans, like going through your body, and they talk about being in the moment and doing. And it's, well, when you're doing really hard training and you hit the zone and the flow, and you have those great hard sessions where you let everything out and you were in the flow. All that is there. You are really attentive of your body, and you really are in the moment of what's happening. Because if you aren't, you get your fucking ass kicked. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to hear Mick's take on this, but just in response to that, yeah, I mean, I think that was a big reason that I put some of those things aside at that time, because I was still scratching that itch, right? I was still checking that box. Every time I was doing a heavy Muay Thai workout or something like that, you know, you have this, you're hitting flow state or a runner's high. You have all these different experiences. There's a kind of syncopation with the people in the room. Filipino martial arts really great for that. Those are details I'd love to kind of dig into at some point here. But yeah, I think there's something that comes from hard work. You know what I mean? Kung Fu means hard work or whatever. And there is a sort of almost spiritual element to that, inherent in pushing yourself and getting to that place, you know.
It's really interesting. It's just listening to you guys, because obviously I'm friends with both of you. There's two things. First of all, I'm going to put Kurt a little bit on the spot here, because you know, you look at Kurt, you look at this guy. He's one of the most wonderful human beings I know. He's a lovely, lovely, lovely guy, right? And I've only ever really been shocked by him once, ever. And that was, we'd known each other for a while, a couple of years by this stage. I think we might have known each other for maybe 3 years. And then that was when you heavily, like, I've got a name check him, I hope you don't mind, but you started training quite a lot with Marcus Wynn at the time. And you were training with Marcus, and then you were training with another dear friend of ours, Mike Duffy, who's probably one of the most intense characters you had meet, one of the loveliest men you had meet, the most intense men. And it was when you told me that you were training with Marcus, my only reference to Marcus Wynn was, first of all, his awesome books, which, you know, trust me, Lee Charles wishes he was Marcus Wynn when he was writing about, like, you know, like writing about Jack Reacher and stuff like that. And then you're like, this is a guy who actually has lived that life, which is what Marcus was, right? So first of all, Kurt, I'd like your take on how did you go from, again, what you said, that, yeah, the guy who's into all the internal stuff and the woo-woo stuff, to go to that DEFCON 1 guy, which is what Marcus, that's what he was well famous for, which was getting you to, and it wasn't a flow state. If anything, it was like state. If there's a flow state, he was a complete opposite. So I'd like to ask you that question, and then I've got a question for Nathan straight after that. But I'd like to get you first.
So it's funny that you say that, and rest in peace to Marcus. That, you know, he passed just a few months ago. But yeah, it's hard to talk about him without getting a little bit misty or just a little bit reminiscent. You know what I mean? So he would often refer to himself in a lot of funny different ways, but the one that just popped in my head was like a, what do we say, like a backcountry knife fighting, like a backcountry knife fighting shaman, you know, like that kind of thing. You know, Duffy and I just always called him like Obi-Wan. You know, he's just that kind of person. So to be honest with you, that wasn't a big transition with him. On the contrary, it felt like the exact same thing. One of his biggest talents, and you know, he worked very hard to develop it, was state management, right? And so meditation is state management, and so much of what we did with him was meditation, or maybe a different way to say that would be self-hypnosis, right? And so I got really interested into hypnosis and even street hypnosis. You know, he was big on, like, you know, go watch mindful, or what's the word? Mentalism people and illusionists, you know, sleight of hand, all that kind of stuff. Those were guys that were using that as an element of, for want of a less cliche word, like their trade craft or their soft skills, out working in different parts of the world where they needed to be low key, and be able to get things done without being noticed. And so the things that he would show us, really the processes that we went through for that, were meditative in nature, but it was less about bliss or peace, or it was still a little bit that, but it was more about combat mindset and the ability to switch on and off into a state of readiness and then relative relaxation. But one thing that I got from Marcus that I never expected, and I was literally driving around Lake of the Isles in Minneapolis and had this sort of epiphany moment. I'll never forget it. I had been so entrenched for a long period of time in this combat mindset training and this, violence mindset thing or whatever. And I was looking at trees out of the window of my car. It's kind of a silly thing, but for some reason on that particular day, I was like, this is like the most beautiful tree I've ever seen. You thought I was on mushrooms or something. It was like, this is the most beautiful tree I've ever seen. And I pulled over to get out and look at it. And what occurred to me was, one, I probably looked crazy. I was just staring up at a tree. But two, any kind of mindfulness training, regardless of what the goal is, it's going to give you a full spectrum of mindfulness. So learning to observe people in an attempt to identify who's going to be violent in the room, well, the prerequisite to that is that you have to care about people and observe people. Right? You have to learn about people. You're not just trying to confirm a bias. That's dog shit. You have to actually understand how to be observant. And the result of that is that every other part of my life became more fulfilling because I was actually able to be more observant, more mindful of what was around me. I met my wife at that time period, who's a therapist, and we were tripping out on the fact that everything she was learning and implementing was the same stuff I was doing. Hers was to help people, and mine wasn't necessarily that, right? It was on maybe a different side of that spectrum, but it was the same stuff, right? So it's really, there was sort of a therapeutic process to it, which is part of what made it so special, because it impacted us, Duffy and I and other people at that time, but I was just say for me personally, on a deep level where, you felt plugged in and you felt competent, but really it was just like a higher state of awareness for your daily living. It's pretty cool.
Oh, man, there's so much there. Thanks for sharing that journey of that, because that just made me think a lot of things. Like when you made that description of the backward knife fighting shaman kind of thing, like that is the trope, the warrior poet, the warrior philosopher, the person who can do calligraphy but then also cut someone down with a sword. Like there is that, the monk who meditates and gardens and does this, but then the Shaolin monk and can do the fighting. There is such a trope of that. And I think about some of the deepest conversations I've had, and they're often with the people who are capable of the most grievous violence. Jeff Thompson and, no offense, but Mick Tully, guys who are very, very capable people, who have some serious stories, but they also are in touch with that other side. And so that was the first thing that came out. Like, it's just, that is a thing, and it always has been a thing. But then also just the similarity between mindsets of, like, whether it's the karate, like you're trying to get to that, like Zanshin, where it's like relaxed alertness, and it's like, well, that kind of relaxed alertness, surely that's what, when you're doing combatives, that's what they're talking about being aware of your situational awareness. Is it very similar? I don't know. But yeah, so
I've observed in my life that the people I've been around that are the most competent with violence, not the most violent people, right? Because that could just be any crazy person on the street, whatever. But the most competent with violence people that I know tend to also be among the most spiritual, or some version of that, whether it's religious or there's a meditative practice or something. And I feel like a lot of that comes from a need to be balanced too. You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty, if you're dealing a lot with violence, that's a slippery slope, man. You can go real far down that road and it's hard to pull back out. So you have to have something to kind of keep your feet on the ground a little bit. But I mean, I've talked to some teachers of mine about that, as that observation, and that there's this sort of inherent yin and yang quality to it, and it's you talk about that trope, the warrior poet, which I've always loved. And honestly, it's so funny you say that, because I've never thought of Marcus in those terms of like, that's true. I wanted to find my Mr. Miyagi kind of guy my whole life, and I definitely did, you know, and in with few other people as well, of course. But
oh yeah, Miyagi, the bonsai tree and the wisdom.
Yeah, you know, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, right. And it's just sort of the idea that like he's like this humble maintenance guy, but he also can whoop somebody's ass. You know, like that's the thing with what we do that really appeals to me, is this sort of humble nature of somebody who has that skill. If you know what to look for, you can see it. You're like, oh, there's something in those eyes, you know. But it's not the guy who's just you know, whatever, just aggro, kind of putting it all out there all the time.
Yeah, what's the phrase? Like, speak softly but carry a big stick, or whatever it is. You know, it's
yeah, tread softly and carry a big stick, man. Teddy Roosevelt. Yeah, it's just as you were saying this. It's like what you were saying about looking for the Mr. Miyagi, you know, character in your life. It's really funny because I had a conversation with we're talking about, you know, the examples to follow in life, right? I mean it. It's like, as my wife says, one of the only people that she knows through martial arts who says, one, he isn't a weirdo, but second, he's a really, really nice guy, is Terry Barnett. And I always say this about Terry. Terry is amazing. Like, not just as at martial arts, but it's just as a human being. Between him and his wife, they have every characteristic and attribute, character-wise, that I love in humanity. They're just really caring. They're just really, really lovely people. And I tried to explain what Terry was like to a couple of guys once. And I said, look, you'll talk to him first, because he'll come in and he'll be so nice, and he'll always make sure he's at a seminar on time or before, so he can talk to people. And then when he moves, literally your brain gets fried, because you're like, how did that wonderful human being, how does he move like that? But like, you know, and I really mean this. If you want to talk about yin and yang when it comes to Jeet Kune Do, you've got like Rick Young, where when you see Rick Young walk into a room, you just know he's a badass. It's like Greg Nelson, you know what I mean? It's like Chai. When they walk into a room, you just go, I don't know what whoop-at is, but that's what it looks like in human form, right? But then Terry walks in and he's so disarming, and then he moves and he goes. And I remember probably about 3 years into training with him, I said to Tal, I went, Terry, man, yeah. And I was it was really funny, because I was gutted, because I was like, yeah, by this stage, I'm what, 33, 34. And I've been reading about this guy since I was 16. And I was like, oh, Terry, I really want, you know, man, if only I could have met you at 20 when I needed you. You know what I mean? He goes, what do you mean needed? I explained about, you know, my home life and everything, and getting bullied at school and trying to kill myself and stuff like that. And he was like, oh, man. And he was really upset about it. And they said, but you didn't need me because you're here now. And I said, yeah, but the thing is, it's that whole, you know, I went, it's that, yeah, I've got the Hemingway beard on. I love quoting Hemingway. As Hemingway says, heroes are important. As you get older, they're even more important. And I said to Terry, I said, yeah, but I really, you know, I needed like a Terry Barnett in your life. And he goes, yeah, but Mickey, you ever thought you're just a Mick Tully in somebody else's life? He goes, guess what? Maybe you wanted that guy, but you're now that guy. And he said it. And first of all, I was like, oh, wow, that's great. And then I was like, bastard, man, I'm shortchanged. I'm not the guy to go to for answers. I'm the guy who wants the answers given to him. You know what I mean? And that was the you know, when you were talking about the warrior poet there, I say it all the time. You see it on Facebook. When I go bringing order to a chaotic world, making the world a more beautiful place, one wall at a time. I love plastering. And okay, what is it? It's just construction work. No, I'm changing people's lives and making it better. But is that because I'm just trying to rationalize because I'm quite a smart guy and I'm doing like some labor-intensive job? Or is it the fact that martial arts has made me realize that, guess what? Hard work and like the benefit, don't get me wrong, the financial benefit's good. But you know, the other benefit that people are going in and they're living in a house that they like. And you know, how it's so mad that like this stuff that we do martial arts wise has meshed into the rest of our lives. You know what I mean? Nathan, you were going to say something.
Yeah, when you were saying about like the heroes and the stages of your life, I was just thinking, like, don't you, as the further you get into the game and the longer you've been into it, it's that balance you respect more. Like, yeah, it's like if someone's a good fighter, it's like, and if you hear they're not a great person, you just don't care about. You don't want to hear about them anymore. But when you see someone who is really good, and then they've got their empathy, they can communicate, and they're just a bit of a weirdo who's interesting. Like they're the people you're attracted to, and they're the people who change your life. Like they're the people who you really gravitate towards. And more, it's if I don't see that balance, if someone's a bit on the woo-woo side but can't back it up, I don't really have that much respect for them. And if it's the other way as well, if someone's just a badass fighter but there's just nothing going on up there other than that, again, it's just not for me. But they're not the people who change lives for me anyway.
It seems to be the kind of thing where when we talk about like famous or celebrated UFC fighters, for example, just MMA fighters, that distinction between like somebody who's a fighter and a martial artist, maybe, you know what I mean? Like, you know, you see stuff of like Anderson Silva, people who are like GSP, who are like trying different arts and they're really open-minded, and when they speak, they're like have maybe more of a positive message. Who's the Patty, the you know, new guy who's like, you know, really honest about his mental health stuff and things that with his friends or whatever, where you're like, yeah, that person seems like they're walking a path, and the fight game is a part of their journey, as opposed to I want to be a great fighter, which is a noble thing, but maybe a different thing, right? You know, to me, it always feels like that's one of the distinctions. It takes all kinds, but there is a difference there. We just had a quick break, but I'm just coming back, guys, I just wanted to show you real quick. So we're talking about Marcus. So I have my like martial art bookshelf behind me in my little office here, but there's this book, one of his books. It's an amazing book, but I opened it up, and what fell out of it, oddly enough, is so he used to have a thing called CQB Services.
Oh man,
right?
Yes.
So this is an old magazine advertisement,
Black Belt magazine, man.
Dennis Martin thing, yeah. But this is a UK magazine, I can tell. So Richard
Fighting Arts,
and then all this stuff is like,
who's that on the back of the picture there? Is that Dave Lee?
No, that's who I thought it was, but this is Karate Third Dan Richard LaPlante. I don't know if you know who that is. But there's
do you know who he is? Wait until you hear this. You'll love this. Like you can keep this if you want. Richard LaPlante is a mate of Jeff Thompson's. His wife is Linda LaPlante, who wrote Prime Suspect.
Funny.
That's the truth, right? And look, when
there's
Jeff started writing,
there's advertisements for Rick Young's trapping videos.
Yeah, and is that from Chris?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is from Eddie. Who's Eddie Quinn's coach? Oh man, I've interviewed him. Chris Parker.
Yeah, he's the next one. Chris Parker's Closing the Gap video.
And man, Chris Parker's legit, man. I'm telling you.
Well, this is a perfect segue. So Chris Parker's thing here is insights along the warrior's path.
Probably man, do you know what? You got to keep.
And it's that's also exactly what we're talking about, isn't it? So the warrior's path, right? Is this sort of thing where there's a sense of meditation or a sense some kind of rituals or things that are maybe at like a higher level or get us into a higher sense of ourself than just the impact. Mick, do you think we have a lot of experience, obviously, through MKG, and our mission statement as an organization is kind of rooted in this idea? Can you talk about that a little bit? The idea that martial art can be for a higher purpose, maybe? Yeah,
man, this is the thing. It's the greatest T-shirt slogan in the world, but it's the greatest slogan ever. And what I love is not only is it the greatest slogan ever, but it has absolutely filtered out nearly every, I don't want to demonetize this here, but every a-hole that's ever walked into my class wanting to train, because they walk in like, I want to learn how to fight, Mick. And I'm like, have a look at the back of my T-shirt, and it's got making better, more functional human beings for a better, more functional world. And I went, you're going to have to explain somewhere in that logo that tells me that I'm going to teach you how to fight, mate. I said, what I'm doing is I'm bringing you in here. Like, this is going to be a sanctuary, dare I say it, safe space for 2 hours where you can train, you can work out, and it's not going to be judgmental. But as Kurt Cornwell knows, we used to have this thing in the MKG family, which was called the nothing sacred rule, which basically used to kick in at about 6 months of training. You'd never do it early days, because if you did it early days, you could send too many people down the road. But the minute you found out something about them that just irked them a little bit, not, you know, nothing really bad, but something that would get them, when you train with them every now and again, you just mention it and whisper into their ear. So the beauty was we had this real crazy juxtaposition of, this is the safest place on the planet for you right now. We're going to hopefully make you feel, if nothing else, at one with yourself. I know it sounds really like cliched, at one with the universe, yada, yada, yada. I hear people say that all the time, and it sounds like a bad life coach. You're going to be at one with the universe. Do you know what, dude? How about just be at one with yourself? You know, let's start there and work outwards. Might be a good idea. And of course, what we do in the MKG world is we just go, we're never going to really contest this. We might send guys, if they do jiu-jitsu with us, to go and compete. But guess what? We're not going to like chastise them if they lose. If they've done well, then great. If not, but if you just want to come in and kick Thai pads and you're a housewife, then that's great too. And that's the one thing that I've found where we're talking about the MK, especially with the MKG method for me. The MKG method with me is literally a way that I'm able to deliver. It's a delivery system of how I can deliver joy to people. And that's it. But guess what? I don't force feed them this. It's already in there with them. And I give them a drill. And the minute I see it, and Nathan Leverton knows this because I've done some of this Jedi mind trick shit on him, right? Where we've done it. And the minute he starts doing the drill that it doesn't look like he's moving well, we immediately switch and I get him back to the stuff that he's moving well on. And then we build on that. And then the next thing you know, and I'm not just saying Nathan, but that's everybody I work with. And then it's like they go out, and I have two things now. Never set anyone up to fail. And secondly, if they walk out and they, as Takashi Uchino says, look for the smile. If they're not smiling, they won't come back. If they're smiling, not only do they come back, but they bring a couple of their mates with them as well. From a business point of view, that's it. Nathan.
Yeah, I mean, through all that, I was literally just thinking about the session we did a few weeks ago. Obviously, I don't really train that much anymore. I definitely don't do weapons, but you put some sticks in my hand or a stick and a knife, and we kind of swung them around a little bit. And it was far more a therapy session than it was a martial arts session. Literally, as we were doing stuff, you were using it to tell stories, and you'd be like, oh, I feel the resistance here. And then you'd equate that to relationships and life. And I was, I mean, it sounds woo-woo, but it was the most straightforward talking about stuff that you'll hear. Basically, it was like a best friend's best advice to you, but delivered while you were in a state where you had to take it and absorb it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to do what he was telling you to do. And that was just mind-blowing. It was just something else. And that's why I wanted to come and do a seminar at the gym doing this, so other people can witness this, you know.
But if you don't mind me saying, right, well, I have to say this, right. I went over to Nathan's and I was saying to Nathan, we've got to get together, we've got to hang out. First of all, we're going to go to London. And this is the most non-martial artist relationship me and Nathan have. We don't do a lot of training together, really. What we do is we'll go to the cinema together, we go out and eat, we hang out, we watch a movie together, we'll do shit like that. We do stuff that normal people do. I think that's why we've stayed friends for such a long time, right? But the thing was, we had a conversation, and I hope Nathan doesn't mind me sharing this, right? So we had a conversation, and we were talking about martial arts, we were talking about life in general and stuff. And Nathan was like, and trust me, I get it, because at 53, I faked it up until, well, after 16, and this sounds like I'm really bearing my soul here on this one, right? At 16, I was at rock bottom, and I thought martial arts is the only way I can get out of this. And what I did was I replaced getting beaten up, as I've said several times before. I was getting beaten up by fucking amateurs, right? So I was getting beaten up by my dad and guys at school, right, who couldn't really fight. And then I replaced it by, I went and found the toughest guys I could train with. which I've done my whole life, by the way. I've never took the path of least resistance. So I went and picked these guys and trained. And then I eventually faked it that I was actually not invincible, but at the very least I could walk into a room, and you know the Don Drager thing where it's like walk into the room and everyone's safe, not because you can protect them, but because you're not a maniac. And I had to go to the maniac part first. Then I became this, I don't know, I knew where I was on the planet. And then at 48, that's when the medical anxiety kicked in and it got me. And I had a very small touch of this, a very small touch of getting up every morning and thinking that the world would be better without me. And like, this is the thing, this is how mad this is. I'm fucking awesome. Imagine how shit the world would be without me in it, right? But even I'd convinced myself of that. And why? Because I didn't feel how I normally feel, which is badass. And not just a badass, but a good person, a good friend, all of this. So I felt really, really bad. Managed to shake that monkey off my back, got back into trading, and now look at me. I'm a killer again, right? But we all have to go through these points. But this is the point, right? Me and Nathan had a conversation, and it wasn't like a deep, meaningful conversation. We were just talking about martial arts one day. And he came out and he said something, and he thinks it was a throwaway statement. Because we were saying about training, and it's like, I can't really do it anymore. I hope you don't mind, Nathan, but you were saying, I just don't feel the love for it anymore and the joy. And he was on about that flow state that he used to get. And I'll tell you right now, I need to add this, right? Me and Nathan messed around with a bit of clinch at the end of our session. And I went back to Gracie Barra on Saturday, and they were saying, how was he training me? And I said, I'm so glad that Nathan's not feeling good at the moment. And went, why? I said, he gave me about 15% of what he's got. And that was about 20% more than I could fucking handle, because the grip was still there. The pommeling was there. But when he said the whole not getting the flow and not getting the joy, that was ages ago, Nathan. And I turned around and I was like this. I was going, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to get it so that we can do that. I'm going to engineer a situation where we just work out. And it was really funny because we were swinging the sticks and we were doing it. And I hope Nathan doesn't mind me saying this, but I saw him and there was this moment where the shoulders relaxed and he was in there. And then he turned around and he said to me, he goes, I had it. He goes, wasn't for long, but I had that feeling again. And this is no word of lie. I mean this from the bottom of my heart, man. That ranks in the top 3 things that I've ever accomplished when it comes to martial arts. Because to feel like that and to go, look, mate, all I'm doing is swinging sticks and telling dirty dick jokes, right? But it was like that. It was that moment where, and I really mean it. The thing is, one thing we pride ourselves on when we do this podcast is the reality of what we're all about, right? You know, and that was that, you know, you guys, when you're listening in on this, initially we were going to talk about mental health, but the thing is, we don't want to talk about that, because if we talk about that, that's too deep. But we talked about the mindfulness about how this all is. And I swear to God, in my top 3 things ever, I went back and I said to my wife, I'm buzzing. Sorry, Nathan.
Yeah, man, what you did with that day was magic. Like, I'm struggling right now. My health's not very good. I think I need another surgery. And like, my days on the mat are really limited at the moment. Like, you know, I'm having to get lifts like back from the gym because after teaching, I can't even walk home at the moment. I'm welling up just thinking about that session. Like, it was what you can do with sticks is magic. With the way you're doing it, and you're talking to me, and you're leading me like, oh, I feel he needs this. Partly because this will help him with his technique, and this will also help him with getting to the mental state he needs to be in right now. And, you know, we talk about, like, you know, finding that flow, finding that joy, finding all that. To be able to engineer that in another person through the drills and what you're saying is just absolute magic. Like, there's a couple of times I mentioned John Will before, when I went to see John Will teach once. And I stepped off the mat afterwards, and I called my ex-wife, my then wife, and just said, I shouldn't be allowed to teach martial arts. That session with you was the same. Like, I step off and I go, what he did there was just something else. Like, something, like, it was just functioning at a level that was incredibly hard. Like, better than a therapy session, better than just a hit in the bag session. Better than it was a thing of beauty, mate. Like I really admire what you're capable of doing.
At the end of the day, I've said this before. Like Kurt knows the situation. It's because I've had the same sort of experience with Kurt. Kurt will tell you, I'm famously well known in the MKG group for eschewing bits that I should really be good at. So, say Hubert. So this Hubert tie and untie, and when my wife sees it, she says, "What is this slapping around stuff that you do? It's crazy." And it's only now. Like the thing is, Kurt's really, really good at this. So Kurt, like I remember Kurt, me and you were at the Cardi group, and me and you were playing Hubert, and we were getting to switch partners, and you're throwing in these crazy wrist locks, arm drags, you're doing all this crazy, crazy stuff, and you're talking away to me. As you're talking away to me, I was doing what I normally do to people, which, again, this is a proper Rick Fayism. Rick Fay told me this after about 6 beers. Rick was like this. He goes, "Mick, there's a secret to this game." And I went, "What is it?" He goes, "Overwhelm people, but in a lovely way." And I went, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Get them doing the drill, and then I start asking them about their wife, asking them about what colour car they drive, whatever." He goes, "Whatever you do, ask them about anything that's got nothing to do with martial arts, because then guess what they have to do? They have to multitask. So not only do they have to multitask, but they take away any of the drama of failing. Because if you fail, guess what? Yeah, but this prick was talking to me about what colour car I've got. Now, how could I focus on what I was doing? This guy was making small talk with me." But it was so great because it's so disarming. So if you fail, big deal. But this was the mad thing with Kurt. Kurt's there and I'm with him. And again, it's that moment where I'm like, and again, not just Kurt, but all of my friends in Minneapolis, it kills me because, and I'm sure it was sort of the same on the other side. We'd meet, and then a year later, I'd go back, and I'd be going back, and someone always put me up at their house. You're there, and you're sitting in someone's bedroom, right, a spare bedroom, and I'm thinking, man, how have these sods got so good? It only seems like a couple of weeks since I was here last, and it was a year. And then Ty Campos, a good friend of ours, go, "Nick, how did you get so good?" And I went, "We haven't seen me for 52 weeks. We do that." So we were playing, as I said, the Hubert is the one that got me. Because now, and if any of the guys from Coventry are watching this, apologies, right? I've gone through 3 generations of students before I've managed to get guys that don't want to do Hubert, so it actually works. So they go, "Oh yeah, we'll just do that patty cake shit what Mick wants, we'll do it," right? So they do it. But now I really, really enjoy it because you're in the process. You're getting hands-on people. And this is when you talk about mindfulness, we talk about the homina, homina, homina. We talk about all of this. But where's the kinesthetic thing? It's like you said earlier, Nathan, about the group dynamic. When you're doing Hubert, you're putting hands on people and they'll bash you around the head. And they're not knocking you out, but they're hitting you, which is worse. You know yourself, right? Yeah, you get knocked out, big deal. But guess what? Get slapped around the face. You're like, "Wait a minute, dude, what are you doing, man? What is this? Starsky and Hutch from the 70s? You hit me like I'm some sort of, who are you, Huggy Bear?" Yeah, and then boom, put it on me. But that is the thing. It was like, as I said, Nathan, what you were saying there, I had this with Kurt Cornwell, and then I changed partners, and I changed partners with Chris Harley, Kurt. Imagine that one, right? So you go from Beethoven, you straight to Mozart. You know what I'm saying? Kurt, you were going to say something.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, it's funny. Everything you guys that little path that you guys just went down together was freaking amazing. I'm so glad we have that recorded, and there's so many points that you guys just touched on. So, but that's what this thing is, right? Like, this show is World of Martial Art, but this episode could be like, this is not a good title, but like the magic of martial art or something. There's like a secret sauce to this thing. Secret sauce. I did it. There's something to this, I think this is the jelly inside the donut kind of thing. I think most of us, when we start the journey with martial art, we don't really realize what it is. I always heard coming up that martial art is like, teaches you lessons about life, or it's a metaphor for life or whatever, you know. And I never, it took me so long to understand that. I'd be like, oh, sure, I get that. But honestly, I didn't understand what that meant, you know. It was like, how is fighting an analog for life? Or just, it didn't make sense to me. But over time, it becomes really clear, you know, the type of training you're talking about, where you're allowing people to talk or encouraging them to ask each other questions and make not small talk, maybe deep talk, maybe, you know, how's your job been, how's life, whatever. The non-conscious part of the brain has to continue to do the action, right? And so the front of the brain, the mindful part of the brain, the conscious part of the mind, is engaged in conversation. So you're actually installing the techniques into their muscle memory, which is pretty incredible. So it's a fast hack to teaching. This is actually a lot of what we used to do with Marcus. It's funny that you brought him up. It's a sort of a neural-based training method that way. But it also, like you said, it's disarming. When you're talking about, imagine somebody being anxious about their training. They're new to martial art, whatever, and it's their first week in classes. They're worried, am I going to get hurt here, whatever? You know, am I going to look like a fool? Am I going to ruin someone else's training session because I'm new? All the different things that people go through. And then you get them talking about their kids, right? And now they're in their like joyous place. They're thinking about, oh man, you know, this sweet time when they were young or whatever, you know, and they're kind of channeling that emotion. They're in that state, right? And now they're engaged in the training. So not to sound all NLP about it, but they're going to kind of imprint that emotion onto that practice, you know, and it's always going to have that sort of connection for them. So it's going to make them learn it, I believe, faster and better. It's going to make them be able to recall that motion easier down the road because they own it in a non-conscious way, not just a conscious way, because you can forget things in a conscious way. And then they have this imprinted positive experience wrapped around it. And once you realize that, you can use that for yourself or for other people as a service to help yourself or help somebody else feel better through the training, right? It can become something you can replicate. And, you know, you can learn how to bring a state of like, I'm going to kick this shit off, man, to your training, you know, or bring a state of joy or positivity or restoration into your training session. I know for me, I get real weird when I don't put hands on a person for a long period of time, right? I'm fortunate that my wife is a yogi and a martial artist, so she understands. She can be like, you need to go hit somebody or whatever, go put hands on a body. And Hubud, it's funny that you say that, has always been the biggest vehicle for me. You know, not everybody knows what it is, but I wish everybody had it or a version like it. It's basically, I think it's like clinch. And when I play, I definitely play like clinch. But there is a thing that takes over where you stop thinking, you're in a flow state with another person, which is really unique, right? Runner's high is cool. You get a good endorphin rush from working out, but it's different when you're sharing that experience with another person. And there's this sense of like, there's a sense of play, which is a big deal too, right? You know, and I think that if we can have more of those experiences on the mat where we're reinforcing positivity and we're bringing in a sense of play, then it becomes not just meditation, but it becomes a therapeutic practice, you know, just like you said, Nathan, it becomes exactly that.
Yeah, it's like the whole wellness world is trying to get to, where it's mental and physical and spiritual, and you know, all the things the wellness industry talks about. We're trying to bring that all in. And I know it's putting labels on things, but it's really interesting. There's been so many things that we talked about with there's an aspect and another aspect, and they kind of balance each other out today. There's been like, you know, the solo practice with stuff and then doing things in a group. There's been the violence, and then there's been the calm and the creativity side, and then there's been like solo practice of breathing and meditation, and then doing stuff hands-on with another body, and what you get from that. It's all the different martial arts are chasing all these different parts of it, and they all seem quite separate. And we've been through all of them, and we've seen the benefits of all of them. I don't know if there's a systematic way to kind of get all of them into a room and be like, oh, actually, these are the 4 things we're looking for, and we're going to do them in these ways, and we know which drill falls into which bit. but it's just so interesting seeing those different areas and how they're all of them are equally important to us at different times, and that we've all got something from each little part of it, the yin and the yang, you know.
It's interesting you were saying this, because years ago I remember, oh man, this is 2008. I was in Seattle, so I'm in Seattle with Rick Fay, and he said, like, so tell me, he goes, Mick, I'd like to know, you know, martial arts wise, you know, MKG, why? Rick was the first guy that I saw that actively created something where it was the Minnesota Kali group. And I've said before, like, whether or not I was reading far too much into it, maybe I was, but I was like, let's go, wait a minute, this is a guy who, this is a group activity. This is ownership by a group. And I said, first of all, it was the group thing. And I said, and secondly, if you want to know the truth, I said, therapy and Thai pads, we're a one size fits all. We're the one-stop shop, man. We can make this happen. And he was like, Mick, that is exactly what I think it is.
I've moved across country just to be part of MKG because of that, the G. That's what I always say, is like, that to me is the most important part of the group, right? Because there's a leader of the group and he's a genius, but there was this sharing of perspective, right, that was happening in that space, that everybody was coming to the table with their talents and their ability to see different things and to understand different things, and everyone was able to elevate everybody else. And I always thought that was so important, right? You know, and you don't usually see that. It's just the guy's name on the door is the guy in the front of the room. He's the most important person in the building, always will be. And whatever he or she says goes, that's the deal, and that's it. And you keep your mouth shut, you know, and it's quiet training. There's no music, there's no nothing, you know, where this was, there's music going, we're talking, we're laughing, and we're sharing ideas, we're helping each other out, you know. It's very much I think you'd say now, like, it was a whole vibe, you know, and it was a pretty special thing. And it's, you know, to bring it back to your point, Nathan, of like, how do you distill this, or how do you kind of make all of those great points accessible in like a single space? MKG for me was a very close approximation of that, but I think the real answer comes down to like open-mindedness, and as open-mindedness as a skill, and then just seeking out novelty, trying out new things, you know. It maybe makes you a master of none, fine, but like for me, the process of trying so many different martial arts, I don't know how many martial arts I've tried in my life, but it is a lot. And trying I mean, I've done ancestral meditation and Merkaba stuff and plant medicines and all different things that I'm like, I'll never do that one again. But down the road, some little thing that happened will pop into my head. I'll go, that was useful. Or I didn't understand that for what it was at the time. I was too much in my ego or whatever, you know. And the whole world of martial arts, as it were, name drop, is full of all of these different things. You know, you watch these like chi masters, and no one can hit me because I can use my chi, and we all know that it's nonsense. But I guarantee you, there's something in that method that will be valuable to you. Maybe not from that person in the viral video who gets run over on the beach or whatever. You know, maybe that is a lot of times the people using that practice to be like, oh, I'm bulletproof. They don't have it. They're a bad steward for that, because that's still all ego stuff anyways. But this as a practice gives us access to centuries worth of thought and experience and interaction and cross-pollination, you know, and the idea of like having access to all of that and saying, I'm just going to stick with this one thing, this one style, with this one person forever, as opposed to just making that your home base and then going on the internet and saying everything else is dog shit, right? By the way, it's absurd, right? And it's a shame, because I think what we're finding out through this conversation is that though all of us had very different paths, there is a lot of ways in which we have similar experiences or personality traits, similar things that we struggle with, if we're honest, you know. And martial art has been and can continue to be our touchstone for that, right? It's not a coincidence that this also, this sounds like the way people talk about religion or something like that, right? It's the thing that kind of keeps us balanced, keeps us sane or whatever. And I'd love if, before we wrap it up, if you guys could offer, if you have any like little like rituals or little things from your training throughout your life or whatever that kind of set off that thing in you. As an example, just to get us started, when I teach, I always have people kind of do like a boxer shuffle and bounce a little bit, almost like they're jumping rope in the beginning of the session for a few minutes. And I tell them this is their time to drop into their body. Everybody lives upstairs in their mind, right? They're up real high. They're, you know, buzzing all day. I want you to sink down into your body. And so we kind of use that practice of their feet banging into the ground to drop them in. For me personally, one of my things that puts me in a certain state is putting on hand wraps. And I always say, like, I don't usually wear wraps in class, but if you see me putting on hand wraps, don't talk to me, right? Like, I'm kind of like, and that's for a lot of us in MKG, that's a thing too. But that kind of gets me dialed in a certain thing. So that's a big ritual for me. Do you guys have anything like that that maybe you could share that other people could relate to or could benefit from hearing?
Well, me personally, I have this mantra, which is this too shall pass, but right now I'm in it. So when I'm there, I'm ready to go. And I have, it sounds really, really cliched when I say this, right? But I use the worst moment of my life to make me still push myself all the time. And it was literally, I remember, I think I've told you before, there's 8 bus stops from where I used to go to school to where I lived, right? And every one of those bus stops, I had 4 separate escape routes that I had worked out. That makes me look like a serial killer, but that is how tortured I was as a young man, that I knew that and this is forward planning by me, and I used to have it. And every now and again, and I don't get it very often, but every now and again, you know, when you start training, you just feel, I'm not feeling it today. And I just just reach in there, deep inside. And remember, you're still that chicken shit, aren't you, Mick? You're still that little pussy, aren't you? And I'm like, and I'm ready to go again. And it is crazy because it gets me. And I need to name check a really dear friend of mine, Tony Summers. And years ago, he was doing this. It was basically like a weekend retreat thing, and we were like, yeah, very, very woo-woo. Looking back on it now, you know, we were sitting there and we were talking about our experiences. And he's a very, very good counsellor. And he said to me, Mick, we need to get to the root of this. We can get rid of this. I went, get rid of this, mate? No, is there any chance that I can dial this up a little bit? I said, because I'm a very complacent human being, and feeling shit makes me want to be who I am all the time now. I said, I don't want to get rid of this. That is what's got me here. That's what stops me from going back there. And he was like, yeah, but ultimately it's going to be bad for you. And I went, mate, I'm Irish and Catholic. Nearly everything about me is bad for me. You know what I mean? I said, I just embrace this part here. So yeah, that's what my whole thing is. Every now and again, I just give myself that check and remind myself of just how bad I felt. But I'm only in there for a second, by the way. I don't stay there long, man. I'm in there for a second.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm thinking more as a coach. I like group warm-ups where everyone's doing the same thing together. And I like, if we're like doing a mobilization thing, I like to think about that part of the body so they're kind of connecting to themselves. You know, I like to tell people to leave everything else at the door because this is their space, this is their time. You know, I try and tell them that, you know, how often do you go into a place and everyone's happy to see you and it's for you and this is your, you know, I try and make them feel that this is something for them and their time to explore. And if I can, try and address the things that I know are going to stop them do that. So I will, you know, when we do an intro class, I'll say at the end, look, like if you enjoyed this, that's great. And you're going to want to come back, but the world is going to try and stop you. You're going to end up getting stuck, you know, late at work or something's going to come up. There's going to be all these barriers. That's not a reason not to come. That's something to try and overcome. And I know, and I'll tell stories of people who took years to walk in that door, you know, who maybe watched classes and messaged and then finally came in, and I'll tell them like what they got from it. Or I'll tell them about people who they see them on the class and they see them working hard and they, you know, like they see them laughing and joking. And I know that person, you You know, one of them actually had told me this story, and I got them to tell it to the class, because he said on the way to the gym there was a junction, and he knew he could like turn this way and go home, or he could go to the gym. And on the days when he wasn't feeling great, he turned home, and he was kind of regretted it. And I had, you know, so if I know the stories like that, I'll have, you know, I've had them tell the class this, because everyone else has had these thoughts and these feelings as well. So I want them to know that this is their space, and if they have problems that stop them from training and things like that, they're not alone. You know, we all have that too.
What, so
sorry if you don't mind, Nathan. You know, you're always looking for the way to wrap this all up, right? But the crazy thing is, Nathan, that story you've just told, Rick Fay tells exactly the same story about a friend of ours. He goes, he gets to the T-junction, turn left, you can go to the bar, turn right, you can go to the Cardi group. Most times he turns right. He goes, but every now and again it has to turn left. And like, if anything to sum up what we were just talking about is how universal is that? That's a story I've never heard from you, and it's happening 4,500 miles away in the American Midwest. I hope you don't mind if you want. I'd love to wrap this up for the only one reason only. The crazy thing about martial arts, the crazy thing about the whole mindfulness is I never got into it to get get mindfulness. I tell people that all the time. I got into martial arts to kick ass and chew gum, and I'm all out of gum. And that's exactly the truth. I got in there because I was an angry young man. I'm now an angry old man. And I just turn around to people and go, look, it's pretty heavy to be Mick Tully sometimes. Maybe you don't want to be that guy. But the benefits of what we get and what we give to other human beings, man, like, and I really mean this. This sounds like really cliched when I say this, and I'm going to be serious for once in my life. We do life-changing shit, and we think we're just turning up and teaching classes. Like, how mad and profound is that? You know what I mean? Guys, it's been an absolute joy. And normally we thank people for listening to us. But do you know what? I want to thank you guys, because this was an absolute pleasure. You know what I mean? I'm going to grow the beard more often if this is the level of chat we're going to be throwing out here. You know what I mean? I'll be looking like Dumbledore next. All right, guys? Hey, good to see you. That's it.
I just wanted to tell you, your last little sprint there that you just gave us, that's the best fucking sermon I've ever heard in my life. Holy shit.
Who Nathan? Yeah, he's amazing, man.
Oh, I thought you meant Mick. Oh, shit.
Oh, no. I mean, I love you, Mick. That was great. But no, Nathan, I was like, wow. Yeah. I mean, talk about this being like the spiritual podcast episode. Like, fuck, man.
Hey, man. Oh, thank you. I thought you were talking about
boys, this is real shit. Yeah, this is the thing. What we talk about is real, boys.
Yeah.
Yeah.